Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much for the venue. I think that many of you who've followed me, I think probably many of you are aware of the struggles with venues we've had of late. We did 5 events so far with my group called Vancouver Island Speaks that were just about really attempting to have a conversation that wasn't happening about gender identity ideology, women's rights, the impact on kids, parents, etc. Every single event that we planned, we lost the original venue due to complaints and protesters, not because the venues were opposed to our message or thought that we were hateful bigots, but you know, it's scary when you're faced with this kind of harassment. What these activists will say to the venue owners about us is scary. They think they're going to be dragged through a human rights tribunal if they allow us to speak. Often the venues are vandalized. The last venue we lost in Victoria, the venue owner told us that one of their female staff had a mental breakdown. I don't know what that means, but you know, they were terrified. So I get it, but you know, we need to be brave, especially now, especially when we're getting shut down and silenced. I think that we know that we're doing something right and good, and we're talking about things that need to be spoken about when they're going to this extent to silence us. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the venue. Maybe the last one on Vancouver Island we can use for these kinds of conversations. Hopefully that'll change. I am heading to Texas and then back to Mexico at the end of this week, and every time I leave Canada, I always wonder if I'll ever be back. So I hope that I will be, but it really depends on whether or not Canadian voters decide to stop voting in authoritarians and communists. So we'll see. I used to, for most of my life, actually think that Canada was the greatest country in the world. And then, of course, I became a far-right extremist. This is what, of course, all my old socialist and feminist friends call me anyway. In Canada, of course, anyone who thinks that only women can get pregnant, who doesn't think that the best way to stay healthy is by avoiding fresh air and human interaction, or that, you know, buying an EV is going to save the planet, or that we can change the weather through taxes, or that free speech is imperative in a democracy. Even if that speech is speech that we don't like. Those people are all labeled far-right extremists, so I'm always torn about whether or not I should just embrace the term or continue to insist that I actually just like things like life and joy and freedom. I think that I'm in a unique situation which offers me special insight into the circumstances we found ourselves in Canada. I understand the leftists who think that we're bad or selfish or stupid people for fighting the lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, or for suggesting that the NDP are dangerous elitists who don't give a rat's ass about the working class, or that not one single vote should go to any politician who can't define a woman as an adult human female. I was never really a go-alonger. I was always sort of on the outs with feminists and leftists for various reasons, even when I was a feminist and a leftist, for suggesting that, you know, prostitution isn't really the same as being a barista, or that maybe young women aren't really being empowered by posting pornographic photos all over the internet, as well as for having prudish, anti-sex opinions about pervert pride. But I also thought that for a long time, anyone who wasn't on board with feminism and anti-capitalism was either greedy or a misogynist or selfish or just needed to be properly educated. I actually did grow up working class. I wasn't just LARPing as a communist for social credit. I really did have a chip on my shoulder about not having money and the fact that my parents didn't have property or a nice car, that we didn't go on vacations like my friends did or go to camp, or that I didn't get a free ride through post-secondary. And in some ways, I still do have a chip on my shoulder about those things, but the difference now is that I don't see communist revolution as the solution to that. I see that the socialists in Canada are the elite, the snotty middle and upper class multi-degreed people who never had to struggle to pay rent or had to walk to work because they couldn't find $1.50 to pay bus fare. The fact that the left was so virulently in favor of female exploitation, despite their claims to want to end exploitation, should have revealed to me that this ideology was not really about uplifting the marginalized and the oppressed, but was really just about narcissistic pontification among privileged people who also enjoyed looking down their noses at the dummies who couldn't figure out what was good for them, despite being told by some graduate student who never worked a real job or struggled for anything in his life. The thing that I got wrong, and what I learned that the left was getting wrong along the way, is that you can't politic your way into happiness and fulfillment. So you're not depressed because of capitalism or patriarchy. You're depressed because you aren't following your heart's desire, which sounds cheesy, but I think it's true. Because you don't have community, because you aren't living a healthy, well-rounded lifestyle, because you're not living an authentic, free life. You're probably not getting enough sun or animal protein. And while you do need, I also think that's true. And while you do, of course, need some basic things to survive and thrive, I don't think you're unhappy because you're not rich, because there's a hell of a lot of miserable rich people in the world, and I can say for myself that I probably make less money than most people that I know, but I'm happier than most of them. And of course, I think that we need things to be happy, but I think it's much more than that. And the amount of people that I know, sort of from my old life in Vancouver, who have nice condos and new EVs and every single brand new smart appliance on the planet, but who are so empty and lonely and aimless and reliant often on a myriad of pharmaceuticals to cope with life, speaks to that. I'm not here to tell you that simple, I was a feminist and then I realized that feminism was evil story that I think a lot of the left people do. I don't think that the women's movement is bad just because its modern iteration is. I don't necessarily actually think leftism is evil either. I think people are taken up by progressivism for good reason. Sometimes because they're a bit dumb. Sometimes, it makes them feel like they're smart because progressivism offers this, trust the science thing, which imagines that the left is invested in critical thought and scientific facts rather than blind devotion to political ideology. But I also think that most of them probably think that they're doing the right and ethical thing, that they're doing care and empathy. This is what I believed, and I wasn't evil. I just cared, and I thought that my approach would help. And I also thought that anyone who disagreed with me was bad and stupid. So I'm speaking as much to myself as I am to anyone listening when I say that we should try to avoid painting people as good and evil on account of their politics. I think it's perfectly fine to suggest that the surgeons who are mangling the genitals of minors for profit are bad people. But I think that the people who've been convinced that this is somehow beneficial for minors are not necessarily all evil. They may lack critical thinking skills. They're definitely uninformed. They for sure need a reminder of what it was like for most of us to be insecure, confused teenagers, struggling with changes in our bodies we didn't ask for, and also, seeking identity and specialness without knowing exactly how to do that in healthy ways. They need to understand the extreme permanent consequences of so-called gender medicine, which are sterilization, often infections and pain, demanding more and more surgeries, an inability to orgasm as adults and enjoy sex even, as well as a whole host of other really unpleasant, frankly gross side effects. Kids need to learn how to love, understand, and respect their bodies, not be told that their bodies are wrong and must be altered in order for them to move on with their lives and not kill themselves. That is a horrific thing to tell a minor. But I do have to believe that most of the adults going along with this narrative have somehow bought into it and that they're not just sadists. So I do think that good and evil is too simple of an application here. What's happening is evil, for sure, but not all the individuals supporting it are. And again, I know this because I wasn't evil when I thought that all private property was bad and that all privatization in general was bad, or because I didn't understand gun ownership, or thought that incomes should be capped so that everybody made the same amount of money regardless of what they did. Or thought that people who railed on about free speech were kind of silly, and of course all taxes are justified because we have the best healthcare system in the world. You know, saying this while people are literally dying on wait lists for treatments in Canada. I never really got to woke, but I did for sure think that communism would provide a better world, and that male and female behaviors were mostly socialized, so if we just trained ourselves better, we could upend all those gendered habits and inclinations. So I wasn't bad. I don't think I was bad. I was definitely wrong about a lot of things. And the reason for that was because I thought I was imagining a better world. It wasn't because I wanted to make people's lives worse. And this is the problem with utopian dreams, is that they're not based in reality. So this idea that, you know, we need to sacrifice a few to build a better world might sound evil to you, fair enough, but it didn't to me, because I thought that the greater good and, you know, getting to that communist utopia that's never existed before, mysteriously, was more important than those who were lost along the way. You know, the sacrifices would be worth it in the long run. This, I recognize now, is a very dangerous way to think. So I think part of the reason that I'm so angry and so frustrated with the left is not because, as so many like to say, that I was rejected by them. I dumped them, not the other way around. But because I understand them, and because I was once like them, and because I learned and I grew and I explored outside the bounds we're permitted to as leftists and feminists, and I changed my mind as a result. I challenged and questioned my own views and my own arguments, and found that some of them didn't make sense. So I know it's possible, and I know that the reason they're all still stuck in an ideological hamster wheel is because they won't step off. They won't explore alternative views, ideas, and solutions. They choose not to look outside their boxes because they're afraid of what they might find. And again, this might sound mean, but I think it's fair to say they're stupid. Just, I'll explain this. Actually, because it's chosen stupidity. They're choosing not to think. They're choosing not to question. They're choosing not to challenge themselves, to learn new things, to explore outside their comfort zone, the box of thinking they've allowed for themselves. And yes, it's always jarring to hear someone call someone else stupid because it sounds mean. But I'm not saying that these people can't think or that they're somehow inherently dumb. It's that they're refusing to think. And someone completely uninterested in learning and growing and evolving, who has no interest in seeking truth if it makes them uncomfortable or if it's hard, I do think that's stupid. I think it's chosen stupidity. You don't have to be a genius, don't get me wrong, or have a super high IQ to be a critical thinker, or to have an interest in understanding or learning the world around you. I'm not that smart. I think I failed math 3 times in high school. To be fair, I never went. I was in the cafe smoking and writing poetry about boys. So, it's not like I'm some genius. I think I'm so much more intelligent than all these other people. But I am invested in learning and in understanding and in seeking truth. It's all I ever want to do. It's what drives me. So once I started to feel bored of myself and bored of what felt like regurgitated takes, this is the obvious feminist analysis, this is the socialist analysis, these are the answers, I know all of them, I had to change. And I had to throw everything out and risk losing everything, all of my followers, my supporters, subscribers, donors, etc., and actually try to understand and question myself and what I was saying. Look for holes, look for more sound views, and understand what's true instead of just looking for defenses of what I wanted to be true and right. And then, sit back satisfied with what I found. And I did lose a lot. I lost a lot of feminist supporters, probably most of them. They pulled their donations and kicked me out of their Facebook groups. And they started calling me far right and racist and right wing and a ball palmer. And it's that, I like men too much. That was the insult. I'm not a big enough man hater. It's sort of vulgar, but these are the feminists. I think it's a pretty misogynist thing to say. So, and now they won't support me because I say things that they don't like or that they don't want to hear, or maybe that make them question their blind commitment to the NDP, which they can't really think about because it means that they might have to change their mind, and then what? Then they're a far-right extremist like me. And I think deep down, some of them probably, to be fair, feel judged by me, and that is fair because I am judging them, which is perhaps not the best way to get people to change their minds, but it's not just them that I'm judging, it's my old self that I'm judging. I'm looking at who I was and how I thought, and thinking, I got this wrong and I got that wrong, and I really did vote NDP all those years, and I thought that was the best thing to do. And I don't even really regret all that, necessarily. I think there's probably a lot of stupid blog posts out there that we probably shouldn't read now. Maybe it would have been better if I caught on sooner and, for example, understood the importance of freedom and free speech sooner and how those rights are incompatible today with progressive ideology. But I didn't until I did, and as soon as I did, I was like, hey guys, we're doing it wrong. Check it out. Let's go over here and talk to the open-brained people. This COVID scam is pretty freaky. Hey, let's not sell big pharma propaganda and goose-step our way into authoritarianism just because Facebook tells us to. So I think I'm angry and frustrated with the left and with so many feminists because I was like that and I changed, so I know that they can too, but they won't. And rejecting integrity and reality and the truth, choosing to live a lie, and a harmful lie at that, just because the alternative feels difficult or embarrassing or uncomfortable, really is something that I don't respect. So, what do we do with people who don't want to move forward? It sort of feels like being on a sinking ship and being like, guys, you can't stay here. We have to get off and swim for it. The ship's going down. I think there's people who wouldn't leave their cabins on the Titanic, and in this case, these people are all trying to keep us in their cabins with them because it's safer. And forcing us all to drown with them because they don't want to acknowledge the reality of what's happening and do the hard and scary thing of jumping ship to uncertainty. I don't know if I have the answer to that question, actually, but I sometimes do think we have to leave them behind. We can't let people who don't want to see or hear or learn or change drag us all down. We have to move forward and fight for freedom and truth and integrity and democracy, even if they call us far-right extremists or bigots or conspiracy theorists. I'd rather be a conspiracy theorist than a propaganda-chugging cog whose life doesn't extend beyond his 15-minute city. okay, I'm a far-right extremist, or I'm MAGA, or I'm a climate change denier, or an anti-vaxxer, or a transphobe, or a conspiracy theorist, and I'm hateful and mean, whatever. But a renowned, dearly departed early TERF named Magdalene Burns once said, "I'd rather be rude than a liar." And so I think just let people call you names. Let them say what they want. Your job is just to not be a liar, to seek truth and act with integrity, and you can leave them to their lives while the rest of us fight for freedom and gas stoves and old trucks and farmland and red meat and sunlight and unpasteurized milk. My most controversial take. I have to have hope that freedom and joy and courage is contagious, and that more and more Canadians will see what's possible and step outside their condos into the real world with us. Thank you.